Time for a little grammar. This week we're looking at commas, and this is our first section in the commas unit for our grammar. We'll look at another section of commas and how they are used a little bit later as well, but this one just has 2 sections to it, and this is our first part. This first part has 2 rules to it. So our first rule that we're looking at, commas number 1, introductory commas. These set off introductory words, phrases, or subordinate clauses. Now, words we're familiar with, it's just a word or 2. A phrase is also a few words together, but they don't make a complete sentence. Subordinate clauses could make a full sentence, but there's a word or 2 at the beginning that make them depend on another full sentence to go with them. Let's look at a couple examples to make that a little more clear. Unfortunately, the Steelers didn't make it to the Super Bowl. This is a single word that's used as an introduction. Unfortunately, comma, the Steelers didn't make it to the Super Bowl. A phrase, in a fit of rage, I screamed when the Steelers didn't make it to the Super Bowl. This is more than one word, but it's not a sentence that could stand on its own. And a subordinate clause. When I heard that the Steelers weren't in the Super Bowl, I cried out loud. We could make this a full sentence just by saying, I heard that the Steelers weren't in the Super Bowl, period. But it's this word when in front that makes it a subordinate clause. And that means that it just depends on there being another sentence that relates to it very closely. Each of these introduces a part of a sentence. And because it introduces a sentence, we need a comma after that introduction part. Be careful, because just by moving these introductory underlined portions to a different part of the sentence, we can actually not need a comma at all. So if these are not in an introduction to the sentence at the beginning of it, we don't need a comma. So we could rewrite example 2 to say it like this, and we wouldn't need a comma in this case. I screamed in a fit of rage when the Steelers didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Just by taking this portion, in a fit of rage, away from it being an introductory portion, I no longer need it to work. Oh, sorry about that. So it's this idea that in a fit of rage, up here it's in an intro at the beginning of the sentence. Down here it's in the middle, so we don't need commas in the middle of the sentence. Same thing if I worked on example 3. Just by moving this introductory part to the end, so it's not in the introduction to the sentence, but it's afterwards, I don't need a comma. I cried out loud when I heard that the Steelers weren't in the Super Bowl. Hit pause on your video now and try these 3 for guided practice. All right, check your work. I went ahead and added those commas in there where they should be. Check that your work matches mine. Our second rule in this section is something called an appositive. Appositives are something that renames something else in a sentence. It usually redefines it or makes sure that we have the right definition. If this appositive is non-essential, which means it doesn't require use so that we know which item we're talking about, if it's a non-essential appositive, we use commas to set this appositive apart from the rest of the sentence. When I think about appositives, the way I remember it is that it has the word positive in there. And a positive makes sure, it makes it positive that we know who or what we're talking about. These usually help define something. Give us a better idea of who a person is or what a word might mean. An example is Kathy lives in Texas, but I want to make sure that you know who Kathy is, so I can use an appositive. I would say Kathy, comma, My sister, comma, lives in Texas. I want to make sure that you know Kathy is my sister. And so I'm helping to define who she is before I go on and explain where she lives. Another example, Jenny and June, two best friends, are always interrupting each other. Maybe I want to make it clear that they are good friends and I don't want to use two different sentences. So I could say this way, Jenny and June, comma, two best friends are always interrupting each other. Now, if the appositive is essential, if it's necessary to meaning, to be clear about which one a sentence is about, we don't use commas to set that apart. So it's almost like if I'm taking a brief pause and stepping aside and saying, oh, just so you're sure that you know my sister is Kathy, Kathy is my sister, I'll use the commas to set it apart. But in this example, if I have two sisters, I need to be clear which one lives in each place. So I'm not going to use commas for the appositives in this sentence. My sister Kathy lives in Texas, and my sister Crystal lives in Illinois. Because I have to make sure that you know that it's my sister Kathy, we look at this whole thing as one kind of grouping together, my sister Kathy. I'm not renaming something, I'm being absolutely sure that it's clear that it's my sister Kathy who lives in Texas, and not my other sister, Crystal. So again, if it's something that's non-essential, if it's just renaming or redefining, we will use commas. If I have to make clear which specific one we're talking about, I would not use commas to set them apart. Couple questions down here. Guided practice. I'll do these with you this time. So, Iggy Azalea, a singer and songwriter, will be at the Van Andel Arena. Now, as far as I know, there's only one Iggy Azalea. And if I want to just be clear that everyone knows that she is a singer and songwriter, there is our positive. It's redefining who she is. It's not saying we're going to have Iggy Azalea the painter at the art exhibit and Iggy Azalea the singer and songwriter at the Van Andel. This is simply renaming who she is. We're going to assume that these things are non-essential unless it's made clear that there are lots of people who have the same name or are the same type of person, so that we have to make it clear. Example 2. The painting's sky was done in azure, a shade of blue. Here it is. A shade of blue redefines azure. Maybe I want to make sure that you know that azure is a shade of blue. So I'd put a comma there to make sure that I'm clarifying that definition, that azure is a shade of blue. The SAT is split by two main core subjects, English and math. Well, those two main core subjects are redefined as English and math. These are the two main cores. So it's helping to clarify what we've already said, the two main core subjects, English and math. That's it for this week. Short and sweet. Please do these practices, add needed punctuation, commas where they are needed, and there should be some answer keys throughout the room to help you out, and check your work as soon as you're done. Please make sure you check your work and correct any errors that you have. Thanks. We'll see you later.